Hey, what's up, guys? So we're going to go over how to close a contract with the seller over the phone. Now, a lot of times, you could send the contract to them. They'll sign it. We had talked about this in a previous episode. I'll leave the links below. Todd is really, really good at doing that, putting them in the corner and having them, execute it, but he doesn't have a lot of follow-ups. Here's the problem, though. Unless you're at that level of sales, and I'm not saying JT isn't, because JT's a hell of a salesperson. You really want to get in front of that person, get that contract in front of them as quickly as you can, go over the contract. Don't do it, line by line or awkwardly, because you have to have a lot of confidence when you say this, because you want to spook them in that moment, right? So it's really, really important that you kind of practice, and that's what we're going to do today. Practice that process of how you go over the contract, where they feel good about it. Because a lot of times when you tell them, hey, listen, I'm going to send you over an agreement, you shouldn't say contract. You should say an agreement, because sometimes people get all freaked out about the word contract. I want to go over the company policy is for you and I to get together and go over it together. Super simple. It's written like an almost fifth grade language. It's only 2 pages. When can we do that? Now, what you're going to get a lot of times is that people are like, oh, just send over the contract and let me look at it, right? And more times than not, if you don't set it up well enough, it's a smoke screen. They're going to want that contract, so they're going to want the number and that contract so they can look at it, because you're not the only person talking to this individual. They will literally take that contract, go to somebody else and go, this is what I got right now. And can you beat it? So that happens a lot. And that's why we're trying to prevent this. Somebody that's not willing to get on the phone with you and go, hey, listen, and spend 15, 20 minutes on the phone with you, understanding pretty much the biggest transaction of their life, there should be a red flag on it, right? And more times than not, they'll say something like, hey, listen, my wife isn't ready, or she won't be here until 10 o'clock. And what your response should always be is, hey, great, I got some research to do anyways. I got a lot of things to do, and I'll be working at 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? So let's hop on the call. Whatever time that is, you got to be available, right? And so we'll go over the contract. We'll go over some questions that JT may have. I mean, because he's just been sending them. Hasn't been having that big of an issue, right? Have you?
No, I had one that had a couple questions for me, but Todd jumped in to save the day. So got to hear how he handled it. And generally it was like a big confidence booster of just being like, okay, we got this. We are still in control. And let's just, as long as we break it down and they understand, they'll get it done.
Yeah. Super important. Todd, you got anything to say to that? Or was there anything
as long as you're confident when you present it, for the most part, everything should be smooth and just fine. The more you yourself stutter through it or seem like you're having an issue with it or you're scared and nervous, then the more nervous they're going to be and the tougher it's going to be. But if you're confident and hey, this is what we do on every deal. It is what it is. Here it is. For the most part, people will never have an issue with paperwork.
Yeah, this is 100%. And there's a couple things where people start getting freaked out on. Typically, it's the earnest money, because we don't put a lot down, maybe 100, right? And unless you're dealing with a realtor or a lawyer, then you're probably going to have to put, closer to the traditional, which is 1%. So they don't get freaked out, right? But if you're looking at a homeowner, you're putting $100 down. A lot of times, especially newbies, they're like, or even people that are realtors get into the space, they're like, $100, and they get all scared about it. But man, it is a non-issue if you present it correctly, right? Because ultimately, you don't even have to have an earnest money to have a binding contract, especially in the state of Texas. You do not, right? We do it so that we could safeguard it as far as like a memorandum, because you can't file. We'll go through this, a memo or contract if they default, unless you have obviously earnest money down, right? So it's just how you say it. Also, another thing on the contract is, days we want to close. Like we have it out 60 days. We want to close quicker. Sometimes we want that in 60 days, but sometimes that freaks people out too. So the way you present that's going to be another one. And there's a couple other things in there, like specific performance, how you protect yourself. That's pretty much, a lawsuit essentially if they default, and how you say that and the tone that you say that is unbelievably important, because anytime you obviously bring up anything with a lawsuit or lawyers, people get freaked out, right? So, but the contract is there to protect you and really them too. but it's really to protect you as well, because we deal with a lot of squirrely people. And so the way you handle it and the way you send it to them is important. And that's another thing that, well, why we're like, hey, listen, we probably should talk to them about it, because when they go through that and they see these things like the legalese of it, they get kind of freaked out. Right. So if you guys have anything to add, man, jump in, guys.
No, I mean, you're right, 100%. I'll harp on the confidence part though. If you just, don't act like anything's a problem. People have, all kinds of objections they'll throw at you, but really just for everybody, there's either one or two real objections, right? You don't have to justify everything on the paper. You don't, you just stand there and smile and they'll be like, oh yeah, you know what? Okay. Yeah, let's move on. There's only going to be really one thing that you have to justify and explain why that is what it is. You don't have to explain everything. Talking about the earnest money, I can't tell you how many times people have had said, so your deposit is $50? The deposit's $50? Yes, sir, it is. Okay. All right. You don't have to justify it. You just, yeah, that is the deposit. Yes, sir.
Yep.
So, okay, I guess that's normal. All right, let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's normal to you and it's just another day, you're confident because this is what it is, then again, that's going to rub off on them and you should have no issues. But again, you don't have to justify everything that they question. You don't.
Oh, 100%, man. And what's also, it triggers me whenever somebody goes, I need more. What that tells me is that they know more about real estate. Okay. Or they've been burnt already. And so it's one of those two things typically, right? Like, hey, listen, that's really low. It should be 1%. Well, that automatically tells me that they already know a little bit about real estate. Okay. Why is that important to you? That type of stuff. Or if they're like, this is really low, I'm like, well, have you had this on the contract before? Because people do this and do not fulfill. For us as a company, we put things on a contract. Our job is to fulfill it because you're dealing with people's lives, right? I understand that 1%, that $100 isn't much, but when they get locked in on something, and this is why this is important on not making it too technical, because what they're really focused on is the sales price. They're already thinking about what they could do with that money. And so the rest of it is just, let's get through this without any massive red flags. You know what I mean? I kind of lost my train of thought there, Todd. I was going on two tangents and we went on one.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Anyway, so anyways, we'll do this, man. We'll do this. Let's go through this. We're going to go through the contract real quick. I'll go through how I typically set it. Now, with that being said, I'm out of practice, man. And so it's been a long time. These guys are doing it every day, all day. So Todd, if you jump in, if you're saying that, hey, I do things differently and I think this works better, 100%, no problem at all. Okay. Either I could take charge on that or you could, walk through how you do it and then I could jump in. Either way, it really doesn't really matter. Okay. How do you want to do it?
I'll tell you what, how about you go through it like you normally would, the face-to-face with Jair. And since that's not how I typically do it, I'll answer Jair's questions as far as, hey, you look through it. What questions can I help you with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweet. No problem, man. I know I'm looking in the opposite direction here. So it's just how my setup is work. So sorry about that. All right, listen. So super simple. When I get them the contract, I'm like, as I'm setting it up, I want to make sure that they know that, hey, listen, this is the next step in the process. You know what I mean? I'm going to go ahead and work on the numbers, or I got a number solidified, but before we can move forward with it, I want to make sure they are ready to move forward right now. That's one of the most important things. And every time you give a number, it needs to be a number that they feel as if you are dying to give them. I don't care if it's already in your buy box or not. If they don't feel that, this will not be effective, right? They got to feel like they're winning. Todd and I have said this in previous podcasts. That is essential, because if you say yes too quickly and would send you a contract, man, their brain is working like, hey, listen, I'm leaving money on the table, right? So a part of that process is that I'm going to go fight for this. If I could get this number, are we able to execute right now? Because I know my partner is going to ask for that. I already know. So I don't want to go ahead and fight for this and then you're not ready. Right. So that's one of the ways of handling that of like, yeah, if you can get that number, let's go. Okay. Are you in front of a computer? Okay. Yes, I'm in front of a computer. If they say no, can you be in front of a computer? Right. Because that's unbelievably important, because if you skip that step and they say, yeah, let's go ahead. And then you come back, go, hey, I'm ready to go. Like, well, wait a minute. I'm in my car, or I'm in front of a computer. It kind of messes up the whole flow of it. Right. So super important. Are you ready to go right now? Are you in front of a computer? Sometimes they're like, I'm not in front of a computer. I could do it by phone. You could still do it. But if you're going through DocuSign through a phone, it's a little bit of a cluster, especially if they're not really kind of that technology that most people aren't, because the size and all this is kind of off, and you're trying to go through the contract and they're trying to look at it and it's just weird. Have you guys experienced that?
Not really.
Mhm.
Well, I have. All right. So it gets a little weird and they're like, where are we on this? And you know what I mean? All this other stuff. And especially if you're dealing with like the older guys, they can't like seem to figure it out. It gets a little bit weird. So with all things, you want to be able to get in front of a computer as quickly as possible. You know what I mean? So say all that's already set up. You set it up perfectly. You're like, hey, listen, I'm going to send this over to you. Oh, you got it. Let's open it up. It's in DocuSign, whatever. So this is just a typical standard real estate purchase agreement. We buy in a lot of different states. We're nationwide. So we have this crafted so that it's applicable for every state, essentially, right? And it's super simple. And I'm going to walk this through. And anything that I say, because I've been doing this a long time, if I'm going too fast, just let me know. I'll slow down and I'll explain it to you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each line and just kind of paraphrase things so that we're not too, bogged down in the legalese of it, even though it's worded really, really simply, right? So at the beginning of this agreement, here's the date that we have. This is your name. Is this the correct name? Yes. MH Interest, that's our parent company, or that's our company's name right there. And this is the legal description of, this is the address of the property. Is this the correct address? Yes. And then this is the legal description of that address. Okay. Everything good, right? It's like, yes. Okay, great. So here's the purchase agreement that we have for this right now, $90,000. And I always want to harp on this several times within the contract just to nail it down. Are you happy? Are you happy with the 90? Great. All right. So we're happy. I think it's a fair deal. I try to put fair in as much as possible. I think this is a fair deal. You really kind of, drag some out of me. I want to feel in this situation somehow, depending on the conversation, that they won, right? And they should win. They should feel like they're winning. Like really a good deal is when both parties feel as if, you're losing a little bit, right? That's typically a sign of a good deal, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like $90,000. Let me kind of go through this. It's really simple. It's only, 16 steps, really just fifths, but I'll go through it, everything with you. So on number one, essentially what this says is that we're going to pay all closing costs, right? But there's a couple of things that will be your responsibility, but that'll be taken out at closing. One, you're going to make sure that it has a clear title, because we can't buy it, or anybody can't buy it without a clear title. And then we're going to prorate the taxes or any back taxes. So any of the taxes you haven't paid, previously, it's going to come out of the proceeds. And then also on prorating, this goes into number two, meaning that at closing, you're responsible for taxes from January 1st to the date of closing. And we're responsible for taxes from the date of close to December 31st. Does that sound fair? Or does that sound right? And they'll be like, yes. Typically, they're like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Maybe the only thing that matters is if they're back on taxes. And I'll ask them about that. I was like, hey, did you pay last year's taxes? Then if they didn't, like, how much do you think that's going to be? More times than not, they're not going to really, they might not know. And we just tell them the biggest thing here is that we tell them that they're not coming out of pocket for anything, right? Because that's what they're mostly afraid of. Like, do I have to come out of pocket? I don't want, all this other stuff. It's like, no, we'll figure that out. We'll send it to our company. It'll come out of the proceeds, right? Anything you want to add to that, Todd?
Not pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. And then here's our closing here. The contract, we have closing step for 60 days. We'll just put 60 days on there, just because, we want to make sure that the title's clear. And if it's not, we don't want to have to go back and forth with the extensions and stuff like that. it's in our best interest to close as quickly as possible or whenever you want. So, what is that, whatever that timeline is, we'll set that. The whole process is to make it extremely easy for you. Right. So if you say it like that, typically people won't balk at the 60 days. Right. Sometimes if they do, like, hey, listen, why 60 days? And I got people that are close in 30. It's just another negotiating point. Right. Okay. Why do you need 30? I mean, you're trying to figure out now, you're always trying to get as many days as possible because you want that time to market the property. But ultimately you're not going to lose a deal if they need it in 30 or if they need it in 14, right? If it's a deal, your job is to close it. And if they balk right there, all you got to do is just figure out what the real need is and figure out if it fits. Because if you're giving them a much higher price and they want a much shorter timeline, you got to bring that back into the negotiation. Go, hey, listen, for us to close in 14 days, our number was really this, what we talked about. But I really had to stretch it out to this. And that means that I need more time. You know what I mean? So anytime you give them something, you got to get something back. As a matter of fact, you really should get more than one thing. You should get a couple things back, right? So that's a massive negotiating rule. You give something, you always give something back. So if they're asking for less time and more money, well, you tell them that doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm giving you the money, but I got to get the time. Is there another way that you guys would approach that?
No, that's perfect. I like that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, and 100%, you're still negotiating when you're going through this, so it's not done by any means. You're definitely still negotiating. This is just still fairly early on in the process, getting this done. You still got to turn around and sell it. So you're setting yourself up not only to just negotiate, but also make sure it's going to be a smooth transaction, right?
Dude, that's 100%. And that's where people really mess up, right? They think that they got it under contract, the deal's done. Here's the biggest problem. If you do not negotiate well during here, especially the timeline piece, because you're giving, especially if you're buying it a little bit higher and you want to wholesale it or you're trying to go through that process and you don't give yourself enough time to find the right buyer, man, you just wasted a lot of people's time, yourself and your title company and all this stuff just because you didn't handle this piece. And truthfully, it's really not that difficult, right? If they're asking for more money, you need more time. If you got it at the right price and you have the funds, or you could probably get the funds, you should have the funds, then it shouldn't be an issue. You can close at any time. I'm getting at the right price. I know I can sell this thing, right? So your underwriting and all that process should be done. You should understand that number right then, right? Okay, so here's another one that can be a stickler, right? It's a memo. And so I just say number 4, memorandum of earnest money contract. Hey, listen, this is where I go back to the sales price again. Hey, you're happy with 90, right? Yeah, I'm happy with 90. Okay, great. So all this is we deal with a lot of people that are unscrupulous buyers. So they will, put it under contract and then they'll try to, get out of it or something like that. We don't do that. And I know that you're not that type of person. I can tell you that, but it's just in there for those type of people, right? So I'm trying to explain to where it really doesn't apply to them, but hey, that this is a safety net for us, right? And all it really is that we're going to file a lien because we're going to put a lot of money into marketing and legal into this process, just to make sure that everybody's on board. And that's it, right? And you can even not say lien because lien could be a trigger word as well, right? You can say that this is just a safeguard that somebody tries to back out when we're dealing with unscrupulous sellers, and then leave it at that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, and then the next one is like, hey, the property sold as is. That means that, hey, listen, we don't need you to fix anything. We don't want you to fix it. You don't have to fix anything. You even have to clean it, right? I mean, we would like for it to be, all this stuff taken out of it. Whatever y'all guys agreed on beforehand applies here, right? So it's super important that you're constantly fighting for that place to be as clean as possible. Trust me, guys. Because when you buy it, it's like a hoarder house. Well, one, you don't want to negotiate with that with a hoarder house. You just got to put that into the price. But if they leave a bunch of junk, it could be like $3,000 to $5,000 to get all that stuff out of there, to get a dumpster in there and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that, like Todd said, you're constantly negotiating, right? Going back to the hoarder house part. This is a mistake I've made. Todd, jump in if you made this mistake too. If you know it's a hoarder, and you're trying to tell them that they need to get this thing cleaned out before you move out, it's not going to happen. Okay. That is their biggest problem. Right. And you're going to add this pile of whatever stress, like that's just not going to, you're going to lose that deal. And you might say yes right now, but afterwards it's not going to happen. You better bake that into the price. Okay. Yes.
100%. Absolutely. In fact, you should be using that as your ammo, right? To get the lowest price. That's the value that you bring, is the convenience for them. They just have to walk out the door and leave all the stuff behind, right? So that's the value that we're bringing. So as soon as you try to strip that value out of the deal, it's going to go south.
Oh, it's good. The thing is, you got to understand, they're embarrassed. And this applies to almost all of our clients, right? They might not act like it at that moment because, their ego, right? I mean, they don't want you, but ultimately a lot of them, they've had this problem for a long time. Like most people aren't selling their asset at 50% because a problem just came up, unless it was inherited. It may be a divorce, but even then that is mostly inherited, right? Or foreclosure or something like that. But they're embarrassed, right? So they're going to tell you something a little bit different. And then, ultimately, as you go through this process and you get this under contract, you're going to probably find out things that you did not find out after the contract's executed. So that happens as well. All right. So staying in line. So everything's sold as is. You don't have to do anything to it. Now what we agreed upon is that you take X, Y, and Z out, or you do X, Y, and Z, but everything else, don't fix anything. We don't need anything fixed, right? I don't want you to waste your money. I want this to be easy for you. So the next one, we're just going to submit earnest money of $100 to our title company. Our title company is fantastic. We do a lot of business with them, and they close deals quickly, and we know that they could do it, and you're going to love them, right? And they work for you as much as they work for me. Her name is X, Y, and Z, and this is the address. Notice I really don't say anything about $100, right? I never say anything. I start pushing the benefits of the title company more than I ever focus on the $100. If they say something about the $100, then I'm like, yeah, I know. I was like, this is something that we just do. Truthfully, we don't even need it. We just want to make it sure that it's that you feel good about it. It's ironclad, and we buy it all over the country. If they say anything like, hey, well, I need more than $100, I want to know why. But the reason I always give them the reason why it's 100 is like, hey, listen, we buy cash, right? And if I'm giving everybody 1%, that means I have less cash available to give you the highest possible price. Does that make sense? Like, yes. So that's the reason why we have it $100, just to legitimize everything, to make sure everything's above board, but also to give me the ability to give you that $90,000 that we agreed upon. And they usually will be like, yeah, that's cool. Right? They can understand that. Todd, do you address this in a different way?
I've done that before, but again, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, when somebody asks, why is it $100? Honestly, we buy and sell a handful of properties every month. We put $100 on all of them, and I hadn't even thought about it. So I don't know. It's been so long. Why do you ask? It's just like, you don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain to them why it is. It just is. Is that okay or no? They'll just say, oh, okay, all right. And they'll move on. Like you said, Mike, the why is by far the most important. If they have a real issue with that, we need to know why, because there's something lingering that we can't see, right? If they have a big issue with that, we need to start digging and uncover what's really going on.
100%. More times than not, it's because they got burned before. You know what I mean? And you have to really figure that out. If they got burned before, there's a couple of things. One, you got to figure out what they got it under contract for, because you're probably stepping into the same problem that you can't sell it, right? That's a big one. They might have other decision makers there that's going to be more demanding. Those people are usually the ones that are going to blow up the contract, right? So the why, just like Todd said, is unbelievably important, right? So JT, anything so far as a relatively new guy, you've been doing it for a month, any questions or something what's the first thing that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, no, I think the first ones that I had issues with, that I guess I got questioned with was number 3 and number 4, right? But kind of like you explain it the way that you're just kind of going through it. It allows you to kind of set it up the way we kind of want to set it up, and it's meant to be set up compared to someone reading it and the way they hear it in their head. So yeah, being able to kind of just be like, yeah, 60 days average. Hey, anything happens with titling, we don't have to come back, ask for another extension. We're just setting up ourselves for if it needs it. We want to close as soon as possible. I love that. And then number 4, the way you're just, making sure, hey, we want to do a business. We want to buy it, right? This is just for the people that just kind of want to not take this serious,
Yeah. And always want to make sure that like this really probably doesn't apply. I know this doesn't apply to you.
Yeah.
That's usually what I always say. Like, you seem like an honest person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're an honest person. This does not apply to you at all. But we don't deal with honest people all the time. And that's the only reason why this is here. And typically at that moment, they're defending their character, right? So they're very rarely going to be like, oh no, at that moment, if you kind of frame it in that way,
Yeah.
So, and also make sure on the closing of 60 days, sometimes you assume that they want a quick close, right? So make sure that, during that, it's like, we want it to be easy for you. What is the best thing? Because they might need to find another place to live or whatever, right? So that's a part of it too.
Yeah, no, I'm currently dealing with someone that he wanted to wait to sign the agreement 2 weeks from now. And then I kind of asked, well, like, what's different from now to 2 weeks from now? And he's like, well, we're living here and we already have a plan on what we're going to do. We just want to get ahead before this starts. Right. And then we give them our actual timeline of how long it could possibly take. And then once I kind of broke it down a little bit, he was like, actually, that works great. Yeah, we should be able to kind of move forward sooner than the 2 weeks. So it kind of helps that way too. So I like that.
I have a way around that. Todd, what do you say whenever somebody says that to you?
Whenever somebody says, why does it take 60 days?
No, I'll sign in 2 weeks because I need to take care of some things first. I don't want to sign it right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's understandable. Is this, you want to talk to your wife or an attorney or your financial advisor? Yes, no, maybe. Oh, okay. You want to talk to, you got a crystal ball under your desk? Or, I mean, that's perfectly fine. I'll still be here in 2 weeks, sir. I understand 100%. And even if it's just, you want to think about it, that's fine too. But what's happening between now and those 2 weeks? I mean, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to ask them why.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I'm going to take it a step further from that. I'm going to ask them why, but I'm also going to try to get this thing locked down. Time kills deals, right? Time kills deals. I mean, you hear it and it's 100% true. So I'm like, hey, after going through why and what's the reason, I'm going, hey, listen, in 2 weeks, like, I could get this money set aside for you right now. Your timeline, whatever your X, Y, and Z were worried about, that's why the 60 days there. And even quite honestly, even if we pass 60 days, is not a problem. And you go, hey, Mike, because I'm not in the business to make you homeless or do X, Y, and Z. I'm in the business to make it easy. But what I want to do is set this money aside for you, right? So we get this locked down and you go, hey, Mike, can we do it? Can we extend another week, 2 weeks? It's so much easier for me to extend it out than for me to bring it in closer. You know what I mean? Really, really quickly. Right. So let's get this thing nailed down so I can get this money aside and we don't have to worry about it. That's one less thing you got to worry about and us. Right. So I'm always pushing for that close right then without being too pushy and push them away.
Mm-hmm.
So really important. This time kills deals. I mean, it is what it is. That's old sales 101. Okay. So number 7, 7. Yeah, 7 is super easy. There's nothing to it, man. So all you have to tell them is like, hey, this deal is contingent upon clear title. Would you have any reason to think that the title isn't clear? Stuff like that. And then I just gloss over the end, and then we're gonna start the marketing process this early, right? Because that's just a part of our process. And then I'll just go through that. I mean, I'll just let that go, right? Number 8, if you're dealing with a landlord. This is unbelievably important to talk to them about. If the property is rented, it just needs that, upon closing, we're going to prorate the rent. So whatever the rent is, it's $1,000. It closes 15, $500 goes to you, $500 goes to me, right? We're also going to require your deposit to be sent to us at closing as well. Do you have a deposit on this? Do you have a contract with them? Please send that over. You're going to typically, hopefully you already had this conversation before that, but you want to button this up as much as you can before or during this process, because afterwards it's a cluster getting anything from anybody. Truthfully, it's really, really difficult, right? So you want to get as much of this down as possible. This is a huge one, number 9. Okay. And you got to really nail this, because just like Todd said, if getting it under contract doesn't mean anything if you can't sell it. Okay. And a big problem with not being able to sell it is not getting access, especially doing virtual, especially all that. It's unbelievably important, right? So you have to make sure they understand how important it is that this is just beginning, and that we need your corporation to get this across the finish line, to get that $90,000 in your bank account in the X amount of days that is important to you. Okay. So you're like, hey, listen, number 9, inspection. So the contract, this whole thing is contingent on our ability to actually get into it, into the property, and walk the property and get our contractors in it. So this is really number 9 and number 10, right? So is there going to be any issue with this? And they're going to always say, no, it's good, or I want to be there. And what I always like to interject is that I always want to push for putting a lockbox on there. It's easier when it's a vacant property. It's unbelievably more difficult when it's owner opt, right? Because obviously they're living there. They don't want people just running in and out. But I'm still pushing for it, right? I'm like, hey, listen, we buy, hundreds of houses, and we found this to be much more simple if we're able to put a lockbox on the property. Nobody's going to enter this property without you knowing about it first, and the only people that are going to know the lockbox is going to be me and you, and then our partners that are going to go over there that have been vetted, right? Can we get a lockbox on there today? Right? So obviously the answer is going to be either yes or no. On the no portion of it, you're going to have to start negotiating that. And you're going to have to tell them the importance that, okay, how are we going to show this? What's that going to look like? Because like I said, this contract is going to be unbelievably difficult to execute unless we're able to get our people in. And we're dealing with contractors most of the time. And have you ever dealt with a contractor before? And you'll be like, yeah, I dealt with them. How long did you have to wait for them? What happened if they missed the day? Right? Then all of a sudden they can't come in for 3 or 4 more days. And more likely than not, I'm using their timeline here to my advantage. If you need this closed in 30 days and I can't get them in for 2 weeks, it kind of blows everything up. Right? So I'm lining up the inspection and the walkthrough and everything, and the ability to get into and have access to that property as quickly and as easily as possible. And this will be the moment also where you'll start hearing a little bit of red flags, right? Where some people they either they can't because they live there, or they are trying to hide something, or they're just not going to be available. You got to know that when this happens, this is going to be a problem on your disposition side. Okay. Anything there, Todd?
No, it's crucial. I mean, access is everything. So it's not it's always an awkward conversation, especially if it is owner occupied, but it's one you got to have, and you got to set some real expectations. Otherwise your deal ain't getting sold.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And also on the owner ox side, what they're scared of more times than not is embarrassed of the property. Okay. They, or sometimes they're just working or whatever, but there's usually some kind of embarrassment factor in there. So you want to kind of lay it to rest where you're like, hey, listen, nobody cares about what the property looks like. You don't have to clean it up. This is not a traditional sale where you got to live in this immaculate state and have everything cleaned up. No, we're buying it as is, like the contract says. We're buying this as is. And with people that are going over there, they're not looking at what it looks like. They're looking at the bones. We're looking at what we need to fix. So, I know that you're probably, if you're worried about that, don't be. It's a non-issue, right? So definitely say something like that, and that'll help them, right? Any questions, JT?
No, that makes sense. I like it.
Okay. So here's what I'll probably usually pause and kind of like reconfirm how happy they are with the agreement. Okay. So I was like, okay, here's a default stage. Hey, listen, hey, JT, listen, just want to make sure, man, you're happy, right? Are you happy right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And 90, you feel like we've been fair and 90's fair?
Yes, that sounds fair.
Awesome, man. Because I want to make sure that we are straight right now. Like we are on the same page, right? Because this is a legal binding agreement. And the reason why I want to make sure this is on the same page, because this never happens to me in the 10 years I've been doing this, because I always want to make sure that we are straight with each other and we feel good about it. Because I want to make sure you walk away from here feeling good about not only this, but about me as well. Right. So all this really is for people that try to default on the contract. And so it pretty much gives both of us a right. And what that says is that if either one of us defaults on this contract, it opens each other up for, you see on line, we'll have line 11.12 and line 11.22. It opens each other up for this thing called specific performance. It's just a big word for a lawsuit. That's why you're happy, right? I'm happy. I never want to get a lawsuit. It never happens to me because I know we are going to fulfill our obligation to this contract, right? And I'm assuming you will too, right? Correct? And you'll say yes. And that's it. I mean, that's it. That's all I say, right? Now, why is that important? Because some of these sellers will come back to you later on and go, I want out of the contract. They will say because they got either a better offer or whatever the reason. They'll say, and I'm like, JT, man, remember when we talked about you were being happy in the default section of this contract? I mean, that's why I wanted to make sure we were on the same page right then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we can't, it's a done, man. The legal part of our teams are already taking this over. Right. So what's the problem? And I want to talk to them about the problem, right? Because I had somebody else that gave me $5,000 more or whatever. Yeah. And you could either not renegotiate or not. It really depends on how you feel about it at that moment. But you've planted the seed that, man, you can't just walk. Okay. You can't just walk. It's already in place. You know what I mean? But if you do it kind of cool, it's a non-issue. And even it's a non-issue, but it becomes more of a non-issue. But when you're dealing with it and they're wanting more, they're feeling something, they want to back out, you bring that back. That conversation is at a different baseline than without setting this up at the beginning. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, and then that's it, man. That's the hardest part of this whole thing. That's the hardest part. So after that, you're just kind of going through, hey,
a lot of people love to hear that, by the way. A lot of people love to hear that, hey, there's consequences for us if we don't follow through on our word. A lot of people, really like to see that. And that, hey, we're going to follow through. Otherwise, you can get an attorney and come after us. So yeah, a lot of people do like to see that there because they know they can hold us accountable.
100%. 100%. So if you, just like everything else, if you frame it right, it's a non-issue, right? And especially you're dealing with somebody that's honest and they want to do this. Only time it's an issue is those people that already are a little bit dishonest, you know what I mean? And that's when the red flags come out. And it's going to save you a lot of problems dealing with it right now. Okay. Then 2 or 3 weeks down the road. So number 12, just default, same thing, that we just talked about. We're going to agree that we're going to have a 3 business a day to cure the default. And then, if there's a problem, whoever loses, they're going to be paying the attorney fees. That's number 13, essentially. On number 14 is that you're telling us that there's any liens that you know of. That'll all come out in the title policy with title insurance. So you don't have to worry about that. And then also, hey, is there any on the 15? We're buying it as is. So we want to make sure that everything that's nailed to the walls, that if you want to take something out, this is the time for us to know about it, right? Is there anything that you need to take out? Because when we're buying it, everything that's nailed to the wall, that's attached to the wall, is coming with the house. So you want to make sure you have that too, because sometimes, they'll take a bunch of stuff out that you didn't really agree on. You know what I mean? So, and it's okay. You want to tell them it's okay. Whatever you want is fine. Just let us know right now. We're going to sign. We'll put this in the additional item stuff in 16. And then that's it, right? It's like, hey, you feel good? Let's sign right here. No big deal. Boom, boom. We got our team on it. Let's go. You know? And then it's done, man. I mean, it's done. Any questions, JT?
No, that's this is why I love doing stuff like this, because it just, once again, it just comes down to the way we present it, right? And if we're confident and it's easy, then it seems that way too. So,
questions that maybe you've heard from other people that would be good to go over? Or, I mean, you're pretty brand new to real estate, so you got to have some questions pop in your head going through this.
my main ones were honestly the 3 and 4, the 60-day one and the 4, only because I really didn't know what any of that meant, you know. And this is why I like what we're doing right now, because it's just going line by line and explaining what it means. It just generally makes it seem like it's just super simple. So
yeah,
I think those were my main ones, 3 and 4, and then everything else is just, I don't want to call it common sense, but it's as you see it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, hey, listen, guys, I hope this helps you guys. Obviously, just practice. That's all it takes. It's the more you know it and not having to sit there and read it, you know, but when you start doing that, guess what? They're nervous, right? They get nervous. So, man, just like, you know, if you need something to go to sleep with, just read this at night. You know what I mean? Just use that. All right.
I'm going to volunteer my girlfriend to be a buyer. She's my role playing expert. I'm always like, yeah, you act like this. And she's like, okay.
Awesome, man. That's a great tip. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Till next time. Peace out.
Later.